Welcome to another Saturday live stream. It's Paul Tobey here from jazzmental.com. Thank you for joining me for another one of these sessions. Without you, they would be boring. So thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. And for those of you that have been already notifying us of your name and where you're from in the chat, thank you so much for doing that. And we're talking to Keith and Lawrence and Alan and Derek and Rich. So thank you so much for joining me. And for everyone else who has not yet joined the chat, please go do so and leave your name and a quick comment and where you're from. That would be great. Today, we're going to be talking about bebop blues. Now, I recognize we've been spending some time on bebop, but there's a really good reason for that. And that's because it's a language that if you're ever going to progress to the point where you're going to be entirely happy as a jazz piano player, and we all have these goals that we want to reach, but if you really want to get to the ultimate sound that you're looking for, bebop is going to be part of that language, because scales and chords and modes, none of that's going to get you that authentic sound. So it's really a language that must be learned. And we're going to spend some time today looking at a couple of different examples of bebop language, one from Charlie Parker, in which we're going to be doing his tune called Billie's Bounce. And if you know anything about Charlie Parker, alto saxophone player, probably one of the greatest bebop players of all time, you would know that when he writes a tune, his tunes sound like solos. And Billie's Bounce is a really good example of a bebop solo that Charlie Parker played, and it's become a jazz standard since then. The other tune we're going to look at is something called Straight No Chaser, which is a Thelonious Monk composition, but we're not looking at Monk's playing as an example of good bebop structure. We're looking at Red Garland from a recording that he did with Miles Davis on an album called Milestones. So those are the two examples, and the sheet music I've prepared are complete transcriptions of both of those solos. So it's an entire Charlie Parker solo and an entire Red Garland solo. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. And for those of you that have just joined us in the chat area, Allison and Alain and Andrea and Viola, thank you for coming. I'm going to play both of these tunes at the same time. So I'm going to start with, I think, Straight No Chaser. Let's do a quick sound check, and before I start playing, and just make sure, one, you can hear the mic okay. Let me know if you can hear that, and then I'm just going to play a little bit. Let me know if you can hear the piano sound okay. That would really help me out before I start playing, and just make sure that I don't have to backtrack and do it again. So I'll just wait to hear your comments on that before I start. Now, as far as the sheet music is concerned, like I said, Alan says, all good, perfect. The sheet music is, there's two of them, and you're going to get a choice. So what I'm going to do first, I'll play Straight No Chaser first, then I'll play Billie's Bounce right after that, then we'll do some soloing, and then I'll play both again on the head out, which is kind of fun, because typically when you play blues, it's only 12 bars, so you want to play the head twice, but I'm going to play Straight No Chaser, then Billie's Bounce, then solo, and then on the way out, I don't know what I'm going to do. I might do one or the other first. It depends on what I'm thinking at the moment. And what you need to do is you need to decide which one of these solos you want to download, and you can only pick one. We were talking about this the other day. It's like, I'm quite generous with sheet music on these days, but on the days when I want to do two things, I think we'll give the chance to download one or the other. So you listen carefully and we'll talk about it. You don't need to make a decision until the end of today. You don't really need the sheet music to follow along. And so you're just going to have to decide which one you want, and you can only have one. So there's a little radio button on the download page, which I'll give you. I suppose I could give that to you now. Let me go grab that. And then you can decide. You don't need to decide until you figure out which one you want. So they're very different. Let me grab the link for the download. And I'm going to put that in the chat and pin it to the top of the chat like I normally do, just so that it's there throughout the session. There you go. But don't rush to do it unless you know which one you want. Because if you go, actually, you might load the download page and you'll see you can only pick one. And for those of you that are thinking, oh, I'll just go to the page twice. It doesn't work that way. Just letting you know. Okay, so let me play. And then, again, straight no chaser, then Billie's bounce. And we'll see how it goes. Couple of comments. Philip says, hey, Paul and Nancy from Urbana, Illinois. I hope you're feeling better, Nancy. You are in my prayers. Thank you. And Nancy says hi to everybody. We had breakfast this morning together, so she gives a quick shout out to everybody on today's live stream. Welcome, Henry. And Jerry says, hearing a lot of Oscar in your solo today. Yeah, maybe because you're playing faster than usual. Yeah, that could be. Good morning, Paul. It's Ben from Boston. Thank you. And what a boppin' solo. Yeah, I mean, that was really pretty traditional bebop. I didn't stretch too far out. I could have done, but I didn't really feel I don't know. Every time I play, it's always something different. So kind of nice to stay inside the confines of the bebop language. Okay, so if you've been to the download page, you'll know that there's two choices. This is straight note chaser. And this is Billie's bounce. Now, the solo that is Charlie Parker, I'm going to throw that on the screen now. And let's just get the right screen. Here we go. So there's Billie's bounce. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about the bebop language a little bit. And we're not going to dive into the entire solo because it's just too much to do. But what we are going to do is we're going to start on the first chorus of solo, which if you look on your screen, it'll be right at the top of the screen. So we just finished off with the last 4 bars of the melody. And then we're on to the Charlie Parker solo. So let's just play that first phrase, because Charlie Parker was, with the language, pretty precise. You would never see him play outside. In fact, if you actually just played in the typical bebop way, but then stretched outside the key, it might sound something like this. And so you see, I just sidestepped the key a little bit. You would never see Charlie Parker do that. It was very traditional bebop. And so there's a lot to be drawn from the language because it makes sense in so many ways. So let me just play this first line, and we're really starting on bar 13. So from the F7, let's just put that at the top of the page just to make sure that you know where it is. So we're starting right at the first bar, 13 at the top of the page. I got to get the fingering right on that. Give me 1 second. So these little, I guess, ornamentations, and they're also turns. They're also enclosures, the destination note being F. You have to really get that language. You'll notice that even in the melody itself, and then when I was soloing, you would hear things like this. Those triplet 16th notes basically take the place of 2 notes. So you have to think in terms of just 2 notes there, and you have to fill that space. So if you look at bar 13, 14, 15, which is this trill, or this lick, you can see that the first 4 notes take the place of 2 8th notes. Deep-a-doo-doo. So it's, and that's a feel that you really need to grasp because it's a style that's unique to that era. So even the triplet here in the second bar, those are important to do because they're turns. Okay? So you're going to find a lot of that sort of bebop language. So let's take a look at this phrase a little closer. And if you don't analyze these things and you just learn the phrase, it's not enough to play solos like that because you didn't analyze it enough to know where it's coming from. So right from the very first note, it's root. And this is very typical of bebop, going from 2 to flat 3 to 3. You ever heard something like this? That's very bebop. And you're going to find that in the Red Garland solo that we're going to analyze in just a minute. But using that flat 3 is very typical of bebop blues. And then he just does it again with a couple of half steps, right? And now we're in F. So this is just F chord with a turn at the top. One more time. And then at the end of the 4 bars, this note signifies the beat, which is the and of 4, the most important beat for the rhythm of jazz. If you listen to comping, it's typically comping on the and of 4 and the and of 2, like this. So when he hits that note, he's anticipating the next bar with the and of 4. So, right? And then you have to use these little sort of passing notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? It's like that and 4 is a very important beat. And then you've got the turn at the end. So this, again, is using that flat 3. Okay, so it's important to get the notes right. And then moving on to the next section, you've got, and this is just the last 4 bars of the 12-bar blues, you've got a arpeggio, then you've got coming down the scale, and then you've got an enclosure leading to this B flat, and then another turn, chord, and then an enclosure at the end leading to the third of the chord. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2. Now, it is a saxophone player playing, and he's playing in a different key. He's playing in a key that's a major 6th apart from this. But I transposed it into the key of F because that's the normal key that piano players would play in for playing this tune. So the fingering is always going to be a little bit more difficult because it is a saxophone player. Right. Right. Okay. So one more time. Okay, and that's as far as I'm going to go. There is a whole solo here that is a couple of pages that you need to kind of just look at, analyze, just like we've done, and learn it. Because if you don't do this, you're stuck with a bunch of like meaningless scales that don't sound like bebop. So if we just played scales, right? And you could play arpeggios. Now, I stuck some bebop in there, but you can tell the difference, right? There's a difference between this. Than this. That's bebop, right? Using those flat 3s and flat 7s and making that sound. And that's the sound that all good piano players are looking for. Good jazz ones anyway. Let's check in on the chat and see how we're doing. No questions yet, but as you know, if you've hung out with me before, which I can see a lot of you have. Questions are welcome. And if there's something that you need clarity on, or just specifically, you're more than welcome to ask. All right, let's switch now to straight no chaser. And the Red Garland solo. I think it's interesting, first of all, to look at this head. The interesting thing about Monk was he always did things that were repetitive. So even though this line just hovers out on that flat 3, again, here we are with bebop language, sort of hitting that flat 3, which is a blue note, right? Right on that same note. Okay? So this phrase is repeated, but he changes up the rhythm so that it starts in a different place. So you'll notice that here it starts on the and of 4, but down here it starts on the and of 2, as well as here, and of 2. And then down here, well, you can see that it's repeated, but I messed up bar 9. I think it's just a really interesting head. It's definitely a popular head amongst players for things like jam sessions or even gigs. So the tune Straight No Chaser, if you don't know it yet, it's a good tune to learn. So like I said, this is a Red Garland solo. If you're not familiar with Red Garland, he was like right in the bebop world. He lived there, and his playing is pretty straightforward bebop. Again, not a lot of playing outside. It was a lot like Charlie Parker. In fact, they actually played together. This solo comes from his recording in 1961, I believe, with Miles Davis. And this was, of course, before Kind of Blue and before Birth of the Cool. And it was just, Miles was still traditional bebop at this time. And Red Garland was a good choice for a piano player at the time. So we're going to take a look at his solo starting on bar, again, 13. So 12 bar blues and then bar 13. Just wanted to make sure that was correct. So let's take a look at his opening part. So this is what we call a quote. So what happens with quotes is they come from other tunes. So this was like Salt Peanuts, right? Salt Peanut. Salt Peanuts and Salt Peanuts, right? And this is kind of like that quote, right? Yeah. Okay, and we'll get off into the next part in a moment. But double stop on the Fs. So he's playing here. 2 notes at the same time. It's not always single notes when piano players solo, right? You heard me do things like this. And that's really where this comes from. It's just double stops. You got to get your fingers around it, though. And does it on B flat, a little more difficult. And then when we get to the next line, these are things you have to slow down. So we're talking about bar 18 right here. And so if you're learning this, which I think is a good idea, what you want to do is just count through that without even playing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, ba da 1, da 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 da. Right? So you have to play. Okay, so it's not typical of bebop to do that. So what he's doing is just adding some rhythm and making it flavorful. And then this is passing notes coming down to the destination note, which is C. So from D to D flat to C. And then playing a chord. Right, so let's just do that. When he gets to the B flat, and we're talking about right here, oops, what happened? It skipped down a page. Let me put it back. Here. So that is a couple of enclosures put together. So the destination note, there's two of them. There's this A natural coming from the A flat, and then there's this one, which is the D sharp coming from a half tone above. So let's play that. But that's, again, that sound that you're really looking for from bebop. Right, we talked about this before. Remember this lick? Like, that's more typical than this, but it's still the same thing. So those are, that type of lick or bebop phrasing is very traditional. I got to get the right fingerings for that. Very unique to Red Garland. I wouldn't say that's traditional in any sense. So this right here, though, obviously this is just a chord leading up to a G minor chord, but this, again, is double stops with those ornamentation, what do you call those notes? I'm having a senior's moment. When you slide into another note, I know what they're called. I don't know where my mind is. They're called, somebody help me out here. What are those things called? These right here. I know you know. And so do I. My brain is not functioning at the moment. Grace notes, thank you. As you wrote it, it was just coming to my mind. I was just like, I'll just wait for somebody to say it. Grace notes, right. Very important part of bebop. So that, if you ever heard things like this, right? That's very like bluesy. And so somebody said earlier that they thought that my playing sounded a lot like Oscar Peterson today. Well, that was really Oscar's thing. Right? Grace notes all over the place. And that's really all that is there. Except he's using just an F chord at the top here. So that's just an F major chord. Okay? And then he does it again on the very next bar. And then on to another chorus. Okay, let's see if we can play the whole thing. I might get a few notes wrong, but let's play the whole first chorus of solo. We'll play it slowly so we have a shot at it. Let's do it one more time. Got to get that one right there. Even if you just learned that one chorus and played that at a jam session or played that at your next session, I think most people would be impressed by your grasp of the language. They may or may not know that it's a Red Garland solo. It's quite unlikely that they will know. So a lot of times when you learn these things, it will inspire you to move forward from that point. So if we started our solo there, and continued, so it gets us into the feel of playing good bebop. Now we're in the feel, right? Right? A lot of times just playing somebody else's solo in time. And even if you don't catch all the notes, it doesn't matter. It just helps you with your feel. And that's what learning these solos is all about. Now, the solos as they go on, and this one's a little bit longer than the other one, it's an extra chorus actually, you can see that it gets a little bit more complicated. But even, and do you remember this lick right here? I wanted to point this one out here. Listen to this. I played that for you. Remember I played this? And that's all it is. That's very, again, if you just learn that one thing, that's right out of that language that I've already showed you. It's just going from 1 to flat 3. And the destination note being 3. So you've got an enclosure all heading to this note. But the flat 3 making that blues sound. Right? Learn it, because there are, even if you learn little fragments of licks throughout this thing, you're going to find that your playing will improve exponentially. even in our advanced masterclass, when people submit music to me, I'm always about learning a new language. So I'll point out sections. It's like, yes, I really like that. However, consider putting more color in there by using these types of bebop enclosures. Even if we were playing a non-blues tune, flat 3 of the key of the moment is a very important note. So let's say we're playing, I don't know, same key. Let's play. This is not blues, but that note is still going to be part of the flavor of the tune. Right? This note here, in the context of bebop, is a very important note. Right? And so learning bebop blues moves into other more traditional bebop tunes like Bye Bye Blackbird very easily, and the language is interchangeable. So flat 3, keep it in mind because it's probably one of the most important notes. Oh my goodness, I've missed a lot of discussion here. All right, let's take a look and see what kinds of comments we have. All right, well, let's start with Rich. I love Red's solos, but liking the Billie's bounce 4 swing melody a little more. Would you handle the left-hand comping differently between the two? Yeah. The question is, when you're playing this, which is straight note chaser, because of the way the tune messes with rhythm, you have to hit the shots with your left hand comping. Now the notes may be the same in the left hand. I'm just using 1, 3, and flat 7. And then just a shell voicing, which is B flat and A flat. Right, hitting the shots. And then into the solo. Whereas the other tune, it's kind of the same, and I'm using the same voicings, but you don't have to hit the shots the same way. What is it? So rather than playing the shots with the right hand, this is more about, the left hand is more about filling in space, right? Right? Trading hands. Right? So the left hand is playing on the off beats, even if the right hand is playing on the beats. Right? Right? It's filling in the blanks, filling in the spaces. Okay. Two different styles of tunes, basically both blues, but significant differences between the head on both of them. And Josh says, I love Oscar's flavor, especially those lines that hold on the minor thirds. Flat fifth. It's so bluesy. Well, I mean, that is minor third and flat fifth. That is the blues scale, right? So Oscar would do things like this. Right? Those triplet 16th notes fit into the space of 2/8 notes. And those are things that I think are important to learn to get that Oscar sound. It's not necessarily a big part of my playing, but definitely in today's discussion, it did make its way into the opening performance. Thank you for the comment. Modi, a pianist I follow used the Woody Woodpecker song to start his solo. When I asked him about it, he looked at me like I was crazy, but laughed, to create in the moment effortlessly. Yeah. I mean, quoting tunes, definitely something that's been part of that solo language. And you can quote pretty much any tune you want anywhere as long as it fits. And sometimes even if it doesn't fit. For example, at Christmas time, you'll be soloing on God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. In the middle of it, you'll play a quote from Jingle Bells. I mean, that's just the way the style works. Alan, Paul, would you provide some guidance on how to practice and master the left-hand bass lines? I find getting anything close to hand independence very difficult. How to proceed? Well, thank you for the question. I don't want to get too far away from the discussion of bebop, but I will tackle this in a way that I think is going to be helpful to you. I just need to think of my early beginnings as a jazz piano player and what I did. The most, I think, valuable thing to me, especially when doing blues like this, and you'll notice that I ran pretty good bass lines like this. So those bass lines, even if your intention is not to do a lot of that left-hand bass, let's say you're with a band and you've got a bass player and all of that is covered. Why is it important to learn something like that? And you can go and check out how to play great bass line videos. There's a few of them on the Jazz Mental channel. Just do a search. I don't know if you know how to do that, but go to the channel and there's a little search button, of course, somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is, somewhere at the top of the page. And just search for left-hand bass lines or something like that. And what you'll find is I'm all about patterns. And so if you're doing 1-6-2-5, it's like this. So 1 to 6 to 2 to 5 to 1. So you'll notice the hand skips. Right? Ba-be-doo, ba-be-doo. It's like eighth notes. And what I used to do was, even if I didn't intend to ever play left-hand bass lines, which I did, but even if I didn't, that rhythm is so specific and the hand position is so specific and easy, right? You're not even using the third finger, right? It's just 1, 2, 1, 4, 5, 2, 1, 4, 5. And so what I would do is I would first start with comping in the left hand to create some type of hand independence. And then, if I was feeling really adventurous, depending on which stage of learning I'm in, I would then start to add lines to that. And then maybe go back to comping. But this left hand doing its own thing, just by the very nature that you're attempting to put other things along with it, like comping or solo lines, that in and of itself triggers the brain to go, okay, I need to separate myself at some point and get away from just the logic side of the brain, which I believe is the left-hand side, and go to the creative side because I need to leave logic behind and let the creativity take over. And that's how I developed left-hand independence. It was really just about finding easy patterns that worked in the left hand and just start to forget about its role. Just let it run. And you'll notice that I can talk and carry on a conversation while this left hand is doing its thing. It's because I can't really think about that and do other things at the same time. It's like, rub your tummy and pat your head. Might be a little bit harder to keep it going, but you get the idea, right? But the left hand should just be doing its thing. Okay? And just play simply. You don't need to play very difficultly. You just start to promote hand independence, even if you played quarter notes, right? Right? I hope that helps. That's what I would do. Doesn't make it right. Of course, I never try to be right. I think being right and getting what you want are two completely different things. A lot of people try to be right all the time, but they don't have what they want. So think about that for a second. I'll let that one sink in. It's left-hand independence means letting go of the structure and the thought process and the fingering and the rhythm and just kind of letting it go on its own. And muscle memory takes over and creativity takes over, and then you're set. So that's what I would do. Thank you for the question. Friedrich says, did these jazz greats notate their solos, or are they all transcribed? No, none of them notated their solos. In fact, many of them couldn't even read music. I'm not sure in the case of Red Garland. I know Charlie Parker read music, but in the case of Red Garland, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But it was not uncommon for piano players or other instrumentalists at the time to not even read sheet music at all. So the concept of notation is a modern concept that we as learners and people who would want to decipher and figure out a language write out the language. And that's how we learn a little bit quicker than them. Back then, they would come into a club 2 hours ahead of time and they would sit and go, oh, let's make this now part of the bebop language, this lick here. and then find other ways of playing that same lick. And they would literally just like, so it goes like this. It goes from one F to A flat to B flat to B. And so play that with me, right? And they would just trade lines and licks and new ideas, and that's how the language got developed. It had nothing to do with sheet music. We use sheet music because it makes it quicker to decipher. And for those of you that read sheet music, it's going to go a lot faster for sure. Thank you for the question. Rich says, okay, I'm torn, so I bought both. Thank you. You know, I do these things. I'm very, and I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. I'm quite open and forthcoming with my knowledge that I share, and these Saturday sessions that we put together are absolutely free, and most of the sheet music is free. But once in a while, it's nice to support the channel, and that helps me keep going, because even though it's a token, it still helps every little bit. And we do get donations and things, and you know, quick shout out to those of you that have given money and have purchased things. I really appreciate it. It's not something that is making us rich. It goes to all this equipment, which still some of it needs to be paid off. And there's a lot of reasons why we do it. It pays the transcriber. There's a bunch of things. So thank you for doing it. I appreciate it. So Modi took straight no chaser. I think that's a good choice. It's definitely a piano solo versus a tenor versus an alto sax solo. So there's a bit of difference there. And it turns out that Red Garland could read sheet music. Excellent. Good to know. All right, let's do something where we're going to let's challenge ourselves a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch keys. Let's move into B flat because it changes things a little bit. So I'm going to take the sheet music off your screen, and I'm just going to play a little bit of B flat blues. I didn't actually intend on doing it, but the thought just came to me. It's like, well, is it important to play these things in different keys? And I think the answer is yes. So we're going to go one extra flat and see how that works. I think you can hear that the playing in B flat and versus F, it's a very different approach. There are things that come across easily in B flat that don't come across in F and vice versa. So it's a good idea to kind of like move these tunes. I don't think I've ever played this tune in B flat before, which is straight note chaser. So it took me a second to think about it, right? Right, I'm just transposing from F. But the general sort of feel is there, but it's different notes, right? So because F goes to like a white note, whereas the first note is black in this case. So different fingerings for me. So maybe a good idea for some of you that are willing to take a little bit of a risk, move it into a different key and see how it feels. Because I think the typical keys for blues, bebop blues, is, I don't think, you would never hear somebody call a B flat blues in the key of D or E. Many times C, depending on if there was a singer, that might change things. So the keys of C, F, B flat, E flat, now you're stretching it. A flat, probably never. So really just like from C to F to B flat and then maybe even E flat. Beyond that, I mean, Oscar used to play things in the key of G flat, which he was just a show off. I don't think it's necessary to do that. I know a lot of people talk about learning things in 12 keys. I've never subscribed to that. I'm more of a let's have some fun with music type of person versus let's go crazy, boggling the mind on what's possible. I think energy is everything, so you don't want to waste a lot of energy doing things that are never going to happen, like playing blues in G flat. Never going to happen. In fact, if somebody did that to you, I'd be just like, really? That'd be my response. I could do it. Doesn't mean I can't do it. I wouldn't, probably. Yeah. Yeah, 30-second notes once in a while, Amodi. Throw them in there just to have some fun, right? Right? Your fingers should move fast enough by now to do those types of things. It's actually kind of show-offy, but it is fun. Yeah, Simon, I'm not sure if you just showed up. In fact, I think you may have. So if you actually, when this thing is done, you can start from the beginning. And the sheet music that I talked about, the two first choruses of solos for Charlie Parker and for Red Garland, we talked a lot about what the right hand is doing and the language that's in there. If I were to summarize it for you, I would say, number one, it's the right hand is playing eighth notes, and that's part of the rhythm. These are eighth notes. So that's number one. That's the primary force behind soloing in bebop blues. Number two, obviously the scales and the chords that are associated with that are 1 to 4 to back to 1 to 4 to flat 5 to 1, and then a 3 6 2 5 to 2, right? 3 to 6 to 2 to 5. Now, in that, the reason I'm telling you that is because you need to know the scale for each of those. B flat, A, D, G minor, C, to F. Okay? So know the scales, and then also know in the right hand what those chords are, so you could spell the chords. 1 3 5 7, 1 3 5 7, 1 3 5 7, 1 3 5 7 of A, 1 3 5 7 of D, 1 3 5 7 of G to C, and back to. So it's always like 1 3 5 and 7. So know those two things, the scale and 1 3 5 7. Then on top of that, blues scale, where you have the flat 3 and the flat 5, which are blue notes. Okay? And then on top of that, which is the most important part, is what we call the bebop language. The bebop language uses all of those elements, but creates little licks and turns inside that. So if the sentence is a scale, a phrase or a lick might be part of that scale with one of those notes being a destination note, let's say A, and then enclosing it. That's bebop, right? Bebop. And so all of that comes from the scales, comes from blues scales, comes from the language, but within it are these little enclosures and passing notes that make the language interesting. And that's how to answer that question. Now, that's not something you can obviously just go, oh, Paul gave me an answer, now I can just go and be happy and do it. No, you have to learn every little intricate piece of that. There's no shortcuts in this music, unfortunately. I wish there were, but there aren't. And fortunately for me, I've been taking all of those shortcuts that don't exist for the last 52 years, meaning I have a facility that says I learn things properly in the order that they came. I didn't jump I don't remember ever going, one week I'm playing mediocrity and the next week I'm playing like a genius. That never happened. It goes from mediocrity to semi-mediocrity to average to a little above average to a little bit above average, and then it just progresses like that. But it's all down to the music, and it makes sense from a language standpoint, and scales and chords and all of that are part of it. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking. I'm not sure what you're asking, Ben. How about a melodic interval down a major third and then up a minor third? Example, F to D flat to E. Oh, you're talking about like just a lick, like a bebop phrase? Anything goes as long as it makes sense harmonically. So let me... If this is your question, how do I incorporate F to D flat to E in a solo? Let's do it. I have to figure out, this is not typical. I'll figure it out. So I think anything goes as long as it makes sense, not necessarily harmonically, but it makes sense rhythmically. So the answer to your question is, how about that? Absolutely. No problem. I don't have a problem with anything. I could play anything as long as it's in time. Let me do that. Let me just play anything. That was the definition of random notes. And it works because it's in time and it's in swing and it'll work. Anything works. It's just depending on what's going to be pleasing to the audience. If I did this all day long, it's just wrong. It's the ear goes, what are you doing? But if you put it in the context of something that's inside, then anything will sound great. It's just enough outside to kind of go, well, that bends my ear. Okay. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, when you get back to the piano, you can go through your song list in all keys. I think, again, that's not something that is typical, but if you want to do it, then yeah, it's definitely going to help your facility in keys that you're not used to playing in, for sure. Thank you for all the shout outs for Nancy. I appreciate it. She sends her love. If there were shortcuts, either everyone would be doing it or no one would. Yeah, good comment. Okay, got it. Will do. Many thanks. You're welcome, Simon. Hey, Paul, praying for you. Okay, another shout out to Nancy. Thank you. Get the dad cam ready to roll. Have a good one, folks. Okay. We are at the end. Let me play a little bit, and then I'll come back and say farewell. And there you go. There's another Saturday live stream come and gone. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I super appreciate it. Go grab your sheet music before I take it down momentarily, and you will no longer have a choice between one or the other. You get none. Anyway, Paul Tobey here. Big shout out to everyone who showed up today and all the regulars. You make this very special for me and for all the newcomers. It was great to have you. My name is Paul Tobey. I will see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Keep an eye out for coming tutorials this week. We're going to have a bit of fun with that as well. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go and do so. And when the video is done, go below, hit the little thumbs up button. It really helps this video reach a larger audience and help more jazz musicians around the world. Thank you so much again, and we'll take care. You take care,